All right. Are we ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right. Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MT4MH studios, where we spread our love and we share our ketogenic lifestyles. This is the Find Your Keto show, and I'm your host, Steven T., ready to guide you on your low carb journey. Here at Find Your Keto, we believe a low carb or keto diet is appropriate for everyone. But just as no two people are exactly the same, neither are two keto diets. It's all about finding your own keto path and making low carb work for you and your lifestyle. So if you're ready to unlock your personalized keto experience and start feeling your very best, you're in the right place. Let us help you find your keto. Today, we have an incredible guest, Natasha Smikles. She's a psychiatric nurse with nearly 2 decades of experience in mental health, working with individuals struggling with mood disorders, personality disorders, and emotional regulation. But Natasha's story goes beyond her professional background. Diagnosed with ADHD at 39, she faced the challenges of late diagnosis and the struggles of finding effective treatment. When stimulant medications left her with roller coaster like side effects, she's turned to metabolic therapy through the ketogenic diet, and what she discovered was life changing. In this episode, we'll explore her childhood, her diet growing up, what led her to study psychiatric nursing, and how she found keto as the missing piece in her ADHD journey. Natasha, how are you today?
I'm awesome and I'm very excited to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. I've been really looking forward to this as you and I have become friends now over the past 2 months. So I wanted to quickly talk about how we met. How did we hook up? Do you remember?
So, the first time I was introduced to you, Steven, or at least got a sense of who you were, is we were in a focus group together for an initiative that's sounds like it's going to be really kind of ramping up this year, but it's called the Metabolic Collective, led by Hannah Warren. And you and I were in a focus group together. And I remember you stood out because you had those blue light blocker glasses. And that was the first time I had ever seen them. And I was like, what are those? So I looked, yes, yes. So I looked them up after and I got myself a pair. I don't have them in here right now. Um, but after that, I joined Twitter slash X. I know people call them both. And then I started following you through there. And then you had set up a challenge a couple months ago. And it was kind of a personalized 2-week challenge, make it whatever you want. And at that time, I was really trying to get my movement back on track. So I just jumped on your challenge and I was like, I'm going to do 10,000 steps a day. And then we kind of just started talking from there. So, and now we talk regularly, which I love.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Yeah, so I did that post on Twitter. I think I was doing a 2-week ruminant only maybe for the
Yeah.
first 2 weeks. And
Yes.
I was like, hey, does anybody want to join me on a challenge? And I posted it on all my socials and hooked up with a bunch of different people doing different things. Yeah, it's been really cool. So, and we've been fasting buddies too, which we'll get into later, which has been a lot of fun. Before we dive into your story, I have a new intro question that I'm going to start asking all my guests, and it's about your strongest traits. So we're going to talk about your strengths right off the top. So we all have strengths that carry us through challenges. What do you consider your strongest traits or skills, and how have they shaped your ketogenic journey?
So I would have to say one of my strongest traits is my ambition. I'm a very ambitious, driven person. When I want to be, if there's something that's interesting for me, I will go full force. I love having a challenge. I love challenging myself. Um, but I also really appreciate being a curious person. So I like learning new things. I like um, kind of being innovative, seeing what new things are coming out there, being really creative. So I think those are kind of the two traits that really carry me through with the ketogenic diet is being curious enough to learn about it, to learn about metabolic health, but ambitious enough to try it and apply it to myself and utilize those strategies. So those two things I think complement each other, the curiosity and the ambition. So I want to say that those are probably my two strongest traits.
I love that so much because these are two traits that you and I share in common. And this is why you and I have hit it off so well.
Yeah.
So, as far as curiosity, I believe in you should question everything.
Yes.
Everything you're told, everything you're taught, all the conventional wisdom out there, and this applies to my life. And I'm eating raw meat and fat now, and you're not supposed to eat your meat raw. And I walk barefoot, and you're supposed to wear shoes all day long. And I don't wear sunscreen, and it goes on and on and on and on. I don't have Wi-Fi in the house, and all these things that question everything. But I think the ambitious part is really, really a strong character trait, because you can jump on a challenge and you can challenge yourself, and you're motivated by that, and then you're accountable to yourself, or you're accountable to other people like me if we're in a group doing a challenge together. And I believe that's a very strong character trait in someone. And I believe that everybody is capable of having that, but not everybody lives it like you and I do.
Mhm, mhm.
It's a big part of our lives, being ambitious. I love that. So let's get into your childhood and your early influences. Tell us about your childhood. What kind of kid were you? What was it like growing up?
Yeah. So you know what? It is really interesting because there is so much of my childhood that I just really have a hard time recalling. And as I work with clients who have ADHD, I think that tends to be a common phenomenon. Is you ask about childhood and they can just remember little snippets, but they have a hard time remembering things in detail. So the things I do remember from childhood, I was a very quiet child, but I think that could be misconceived as being shy. And I don't think I was shy. I think I was quiet because I was usually the kind of person who could just sit back, analyze situations. But I always really struggled, and I still struggle to this day, talking in groups. And I think a big piece of that was not being able to either follow along with a conversation because it might have been boring for me and I drift off, or there's a conversation going and you have a key point you want to bring in and then you forget what the key point was, so you just stay silent and the conversation keeps moving, or all you do is hold on to that key point and then you're interjecting when the conversation's shifted and already passed where the key point would have been effective. So I think maybe that's why I was a little bit more quiet too, is just really struggling with knowing when I should be talking amongst a group of people. So that was always kind of a struggle. One on one, I'm totally fine. Or if it's a smaller group, I'm fine, but those bigger groups, so things like that, like trying to follow along in a class might have been more difficult. Um, I remember too, the things that I really enjoyed were if it was recess. And this is something that I've been thinking about a lot more lately with the ADHD diagnosis, is I wasn't the kind of person who would play recess and want to play house and make forts and make a little house with the girls. I was the one playing recess with all the boys doing snowball fights and pushing each other in the snowbanks. So I did have a little bit of a rambunctious side when it came to kind of playing with other kids. And that kind of carried on into sports too. When I played sports, I was kind of more of that person who was really like, really committed, but really maybe overly assertive or even aggressive, depending on the sport. Like I would go all in. Um, and then the other thing I thought about a lot too is just being outside. As a kid, I always had to be outside, like outside building things or creating things or following my own storylines. I was a very independent kid, so I didn't really need to interact with my siblings that much. I have two younger siblings. I was totally fine to just go outside my where I grew up and where my parents still live. There's kind of a forested area behind the house, and I was just in that forest all the time. And that's kind of still, I think, how I'm hardwired. Like if I can be outside, that is where I feel at my best. So, in terms of childhood, I feel like those are the things that stand out the most. Now, the interesting thing, I'm going to shift into the ADHD part here a little bit. When I was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult, I was trying to figure out and remember how that impacted my childhood because I did well in school. I was, when I was younger, honor roll student. It wasn't really until high school where there were certain subjects that really started, where the grades started to go down because they were the subjects I just wasn't interested in. And the subjects I enjoyed were the areas where I really, really excelled. So even looking back on past report cards, you can see like there's either like A pluses or there's like, B minuses and C's because it's like put in the bare minimum. I don't care about those classes. Um, so I always thought I performed well in school. And then I asked, this was just last year, I asked my mom for my old report cards, and looking through and seeing the teacher's comments, there were definitely signs. So they were signs that I think we would pick up on now because I think we're well versed in understanding ADHD a lot more than we would have been in the 90s when I would have been a kid in school, right? So there were little comments about basic things like remembering any kind of mental math. I was terrible with mental math. I couldn't memorize, the times table or the multiplication tables. And I remember my mom would spend extra time with me outside of school because I was struggling in that area. Things like I could produce really great work, but then forget the most minuscule things that were actually really important so I could make a beautiful looking project. But if I wrote like a sentence in there, a keyword in the sentence might have been missing, like something that most people wouldn't miss. And there's this comment, I think it was like my grade 4 or my grade 5 teacher wrote in there, Natasha produces great work at great pains. So I think that just shows like how hard or how difficult or how much I had to strain to do something well. So I think looking back, there were a lot of these little signs that were probably there, but I don't think anyone would have caught it. And I sure as heck wouldn't have caught it either, because how would I know any differently?
Right, exactly, yeah. It's very interesting what you shared about your childhood because it sounds a lot like mine. I I grew up outdoors and in the woods. We had woods by my house, and I was me and my friends were always on our bikes, and me and the kids in the neighborhood were always either playing football or basketball or wiffle ball on the court, or we were riding our bikes to the woods, or we were playing manhunt. And I would spend all day on my bike, and I had to come home for dinner every day, and I hated that, and I never wanted to come home, especially in the summer, and I would always stay out late, and I would come up with schemes to try to I would be down the corner from my house, and I would pop my chain off deliberately and get grease all over my hands, be like, "This is why I'm late because my chain came off." Like, as if I was getting over on my parents, like they didn't know what I was doing, because I didn't wanna come home, I just wanted to stay out all day.
Yeah. Aw.
You sound a lot like Samantha as well because she'll play kitchen and house and with dolls, but she's also a roughhouser. Her and I are a lot like siblings, and we wrestle and stuff like that in the house. And she's like that with some of her friends, and especially with her boyfriends that come over for play dates, and they'll be wrestling and stuff. So it makes me wonder. I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but it sounds like I share a lot of that stuff. You
Mhm.
know, they have these boxes of like I was diagnosed as bipolar 1 mixed. So I fit in there, but I also fit in a little bit with schizophrenia minus the delusions or the voices.
Mm.
I also fit in um, the borderline personality disorder. This is why I think when I did DBT, it was effective for me. So I probably fit into the ADHD box a little bit too. What you said about not remembering your childhood, I have that too, and I always wondered if it was because I suffered trauma at an early age, and so I know that that can happen where you block things out,
Yeah.
but maybe it's the ADHD effect that you had where I have things that I can't remember that well. What do you think?
Yeah. I think it could be a combination because that's a thought that I've reflected on a lot. For me, I don't have in my childhood any really big, significant traumatic events. But I think feeling as a small child like you can't quite fit in and that you have to kind of pull back and observe things because you're not sure how to properly interact or worried about how you're interacting, I think that in itself is going to shape you to some degree. And probably as a child, feeling like you don't know how to fit in the world, that in itself is going to be traumatic to some extent, right? So I think it could be a little bit of both. There's also just a lot of things too where like you know, before the ketogenic diet, there were a lot of things that I forgot all the time. So I also think that just having ADHD, there is a component where it's like, I just don't remember things from childhood, probably because it wasn't important enough to remember.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And the thing you said about how you doing just enough to get by in school, that was like my whole story. Was always doing just enough to get by and then still always getting A's and B's for the most
Mhm.
part. And I
Mhm.
was like in the advanced placement reading and writing classes. I always loved writing, but I always that's that's the story of my life is always doing just enough to get by. And
Yeah.
I still suffer that today sometimes as a symptom to where I'm doing just enough to be an 8 or 9 on a 10 scale, but I'm not always doing that extra step to be at a 10 as much as possible. That's something that's plagued me.
Yeah. Even as you're saying that though, Stephen, the thought that's coming to my mind, and it sounds like you're familiar with DBT, but I always think, and this, like, I learned about DBT in 2012, and I've been running DBT groups and, working as a DBT therapist primarily for the last 10 years. That's what a lot of my focus has been on, is providing DBT specific treatment. And a big concept in DBT is this idea of wise mind. And what I tell people, so I should get into that a bit. Wise mind is this idea that you're kind of bridging your emotional mind and your reasonable logical mind. So instead of being either running off emotion or being almost robotic where you're just like reasonable and rational, we're trying to get better at bridging those two concepts. And often people will be like, well, what does wise mind even mean? Like, people really struggle with this concept of how do we bridge this? And right from the get-go, I'm like, it's just being effective. Like, if I can go through a situation and recognize I was effective, I was probably in wise mind. So even though I might be doing something at 80 or 90%, if at the end of the day it's effective, I can leave it and be like, I'm okay if that thing's not 100. Because there are some other things where I want to be 100%. So part of this is also picking and choosing, like, when is something good enough? Because sometimes that can just be effective.
And I agree with you. It's funny hearing you say the words wise mind. So when I did my DBT, it was a couple of years ago, and my therapist was a Hasidic Jew, and he was from New York. So he would say wise mind like that. And as as you're saying it, I hear his voice because
Oh,
I heard him say that phrase so many times. It's hilarious.
oh,
Um,
I'm going to hear that every time now, too.
I was just laughing. I could literally hear his voice. It took me back.
Oh, man.
Um, yeah, and this is part of where I would struggle with this this logic of is that like you're giving me a break. You're allowing if I do this wise mind thing, you're allowing me to slack off and only do 90% effort and say that it's okay. And I'm like you, I'm like an all in kind of person. So with certain things, if I feel like I'm not all in, I feel like I'm failing, like I'm not doing it right.
Mm,
So don't tell me that 90% is okay because then I'm only going to do 90%. And that's in some areas of life, that's not good enough. I can apply that logic to certain things, but in some areas, that's not good enough for me,
right.
especially with it being something that has plagued me my whole life. That where I'm only doing the 90% where I should be applying myself the best I can. Makes
Right.
sense.
No. Oh, for sure.
So we're talking about DBT. Maybe you should just explain quickly to people who have no idea. Like maybe you could compare DBT to CBT. What are these things?
Yeah, so I mean, DBT was essentially derived from aspects of CBT. So CBT is cognitive behavior therapy. I think it kind of became really popular in the 70s. Don't quote me on that because if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I think it was around that timeline when behaviorism kind of really started like to take off. So CBT is really about analyzing your thought patterns, how it's affecting, behaviors and actions. So it's the intertwine of those three concepts. And DBT, so dialectical behavior therapy, you know, pulls some CBT concepts, but it was a therapy that was developed in the early 90s, specifically for people who struggled with borderline personality disorder. Um, it's utilized now for a wide variety of mental health conditions. So, like, personally, I've seen it help people who have ADHD, severe depressive disorder, PTSD. Yeah, we work with a lot of people who have trauma in general. And even we've had a couple of people who have OCD, sometimes bipolar, if people are, not having like the massive mood swings. They can do well in that treatment. But anyway, so DBT treatment in general was essentially made for individuals who struggled a lot with emotion regulation, and it's based on teaching skills. So there's kind of two main components for the clients when it comes to a DBT treatment. One is that they work with an individual therapist, and the focus of those sessions is to look at behavioral patterns that we would want to see change over time. So and we're saying behavioral patterns that are detrimental to a person. So those could be things like self-harm, it could be suicidal ideation, it could be not showing up to your therapy appointment, like so anything that's therapy interfering, or any other behavior that's just making your life potentially worse. And as you're analyzing the behaviors with your therapist and coming up with strategies on how to mitigate those behaviors from happening or understanding the reinforcers as to why they're happening, that client is also usually enrolled in a skills group as well. So the DBT skills group is based on four main modules. So there's a mindfulness component to it. Mindfulness is a big core of that therapy because you have to be aware in the moment of a thought, a feeling, or like an urge, or like that you're going to act on a behavior if you want to change it. Like if you're not even aware of it, good luck changing anything, right? So the mindfulness is building the awareness. And then the other modules are focused around distress tolerance. So that's when I'm, in a period of really, really high stress, like so a crisis type moment, how do I ride that feeling out without making the situation worse? Because my emotions will eventually come down. And there's also this component of radical acceptance. So, how can I work towards accepting the things I can't change? Because sometimes we are in scenarios where we can't change what's happening, but we have to learn how to tolerate it. And then there's an emotion regulation module, which talks about the basic human emotions, how to validate emotions. Do the emotions make sense? Do they not make sense? How do you check facts around emotions? So how do you, work more effectively when you're feeling certain emotions? And then there's an interpersonal module as well. So interpersonal effectiveness is really starting to look at when I'm having an interaction with another person, how do I want to start ranking how important that objective is, how important my self-respect is in this moment, how important is that relationship. There's a lot of talk around boundaries, like how do I ask for things, how do I say no to things, how do I evaluate how strongly I should ask or say no to something. So that's kind of the main um, components of the treatment. So it's a lot of analyzing behaviors and trying to work towards behavior change as you're learning new skills and strategies.
Oh, that was a great explanation. And I feel like all the stuff that I learned in DBT, like even though it's for people that are struggling with mental health issues, I feel like it could be something that's given in elementary school. It could be
Oh,
something
for
that
sure.
applies to everybody. Like the mindfulness, a lot of the things I learned in the DBT were very powerful. And I feel like an 8-year-old like my daughter should be learning that kind of stuff too. And I struggled really with the mindfulness, and this is one of those areas where the ketogenic diet is the basis for everything I do. If I'm not doing the ketogenic diet to the level I need to, I can't be mindful in the moment because I will be irritable and angry and something will happen and I will get triggered and I can have all of the tools in my toolbox, but if I'm not in a deep state of ketosis, I don't have access to my tools. So I can't be mindful in the moment. I can't stop myself from snapping and possibly yelling or having a bad reaction to something. I need to have the ketogenic diet as my basis. And then I can be mindful in the moment. And one of the biggest takeaways I got from my DBT therapy was being able to look at positives and negatives. So, like, I would get on a weekly call with my therapist. How was your week? And I would say, my week was terrible. This, and this happened. And then he would say, well, give me some positive things that happened. And I would sit and reflect. And then it became part of my homework that I would be reporting all the positives. So when I look at my week, I'd say, yeah, these 3 really bad things happened. But when I analyze the positives, well, there was
Mhm.
like 8 really positive things that happened.
Yeah.
So was it really a bad week? Well, no, I was just focusing on the negative. And that's something I still take with me today. And it's also trying to stay in the moment and enjoy positive things as they're happening, which I found that very useful. Stay in the moment. It could be something simple like I'm sitting on the couch and Samantha's leaning her head on my shoulder and we're watching a show.
Mhm.
And with my, I guess if I have ADHD or whatever you want to call it, staying in that moment can be difficult because I'm already thinking about the next thing I'm doing 5 minutes from now. And it's like all I have to do is like shuffle a second and that moment's gonna be over. So trying to stay in that moment and enjoy it and realize it and and make it last as long as possible. That was one of the takeaways I got from
Mhm,
DBT.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and that all corresponds with the mindfulness, and we talk about that in DBT too, right? Mindfulness can really enhance your life because we often have situations that, are really pleasant events, but we're not even aware of the events as they're occurring, or we're not looking for those things, right? So it's about being more aware of like what's happening in your surroundings and kind of looking for the beauty in life, right? Like when you're with your daughter, right? Like, trying to really fully embrace that moment as it's occurring.
Right, and the idea of staying in the moment and not focusing or thinking about what's gonna be happening in 5 minutes or the next thing you
Mhm,
wanna do.
mhm. Yeah.
That's been a struggle of mine too, and so one of the ways that I like to compare the CBT to the DBT is, to me, CBT is like your regular talk therapy. So if you just go into a therapist down the street and you guys are gonna sit and talk, they're gonna be using CBT techniques and you're just gonna talk. But when you do DBT, you have workbooks and you
Yes.
have exercises and homework, and it's probably not for everybody. I'm
Mhm.
the type where I respond well to these type of things. It's the accountability and having the homework, and even if I'm not even gaining anything from the assignment itself, but just having the assignment and thinking about it and doing it is helping me, and it's helping me be in a positive cycle and positive thinking. So I'm the type where I really respond well to the homework. And for anybody who's interested, you don't have to go to a therapist. You can just go on Amazon. That's what I did because there was a long wait list to get into DBT. I never got into a group session because it was such a long wait list.
Right.
I did get the one-on-one, but I bought my own workbooks and I started reading and doing some of the homework all on my own.
Yeah. I was gonna say too, there is a really good website. So the developer of DBT, Marsha Linehan, she has a website called nowmattersnow.org. And you can learn a lot about the skills and strategies, from that workbook that you're talking about and, what you would learn in the skills group. So it's all on that platform and they have a lot of videos and things on there too. So we often will refer people to check out that site.
All right, that's great. I'm glad you shared that because I know there's going to be a lot of people watching this interview that are struggling with their own mental health. And for me, I mean, 30 years with bipolar and so much therapy and psychiatrists and medications, I didn't hear about DBT or even borderline personality disorder until just a couple years ago.
Mhm,
And it was
mhm.
somebody on Reddit that I was interacting with that approached me and said, "Hey, have you ever heard about this thing?" I'm like, "No, I don't know what it is. I'm not even sure what borderline is." But then when I read the DSM criteria for borderline, I'm like, well, that sounds a lot like me. So let me give this DBT a shot. So it'll be good to let people that don't already know about this have an opportunity to learn about it and to go to that website or maybe get one of these books on Amazon and just check it out.
Yeah. I was gonna say too, with that being said, Stephen, another thing I've been thinking a lot about lately is when I learned about DBT. So that was in 2012. And you have to remember, this treatment started in the early 90s, when it kind of ran maybe some of its first research trials. And when I was learning about DBT and getting training on it, and I was working for a community mental health program at that time, because the idea was that the community mental health programs in our province were going to start having DBT teams to run skills groups. At that time, there was a lot of pushback from other mental health practitioners about how dumb this was, or how mindfulness is like all woo woo, and psychiatry, like some psychiatrists were not on board with it. And I agree with you. So the DBT program, because we run it completely privately, we moved into a clinic space in when was this? 2020, right before the pandemic here. Wow, yeah, I've been there for 5 years now. So in the last 5 years, DBT has absolutely exploded. We have, I think right now we have 5 or 6 clinicians that work with myself and my business partner because we can't keep up with the wait lists. So we get inquiries every other day of people wanting to enroll in this program, and look at how busy it's been. And I almost feel like this is what I'm hoping is going to happen with metabolic health, right? Is that we're onto something. People are going to be like, oh, this is silly, or it's all woo woo, or what are these people doing, eating these wild diets? But guaranteed 5, 10 years from now, there's going to be a massive shift and so many people are going to be on board with it because I've seen it happen with DBT. So there's no reason why this can't happen with metabolic treatments for mental health.
I think you're absolutely right. I'm happy to hear that DBT is catching on like that. I know this was a couple years ago for me, and there was a huge wait list already for it. And like I said, with it being content that is, I think, appropriate just for everybody out there, not just people suffering from
Yes.
mental health. It's
Yeah.
good. It's good to have that exposure. And I think what you're saying about the metabolic therapies too. It's a tidal wave. It is growing, and it
Yes.
cannot be stopped. It's just a matter of time before,
100%.
yeah, because it works. It absolutely works. It's funny you said woo woo a couple times there because when I got my first DBT book, I started reading through it, and I was not well at the time. I was still doing a keto diet, but not doing it to the level I need to. And I was still eating junk at the time. And I'm reading through this book. I'm like, this is a bunch of crap. Like, this is ridiculous. I can't be mindful. What is mindfulness? It sounds so corny. I can't do that. But I was struggling at the time. And with my irritability, my anger, it's like, something triggers me. And like, it could be something simple, like I'm carrying a box through the house and the box falls, and if I'm not well, that could ruin my day. The box falls, I have valuables in it, and now I'm kicking the box. I'm like, oh, I'm cursing. Like, how am I supposed to be mindful when I react like that? And I thought it was
Yes.
all woo woo.
Yeah. Yeah. Between you and me too, and I guess everyone else that's watching, there's still the odd sentence in that book where I'm like, I wish it was written in a different way because I cannot get on board with with it. So,
You
but
just
that's fine. It doesn't have to work. Not every concept has to work for
right.
every person either. And that's what I like about the skills. It's very much let's throw a ton of skills at you and pick and choose what's going to work. Because not every skill is going to work for every person in every scenario.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know from my experience that when something is helpful to other people and I have this reaction, like I think it's corny, that means that I'm just trying to avoid it, and I should go after it.
Mm.
So I did that for years with meditation. I knew so many people talking about meditation. I just thought it was like the corniest thing and it wouldn't work for me. And I avoided it. And then I started meditating last year. And what do you know? I like it and it works. And now I meditate every day. And then even within the meditation, doing doing mantras, I thought that was corny. So here I am meditating, but I'm making fun in my mind, I'm making fun of the mantras. And I've added mantras in the past couple of months, and sure enough, it's taken my meditation to another level. I
Right.
remember when I first started attending AA, and it seemed like a religious concept because it's a higher power, and everybody's higher power was God. But at the time, I didn't believe in God. So I'm like, I
Mhm.
can't get with this. I can't do it. And then somebody explained to me, like, well, it's just a higher power. It doesn't have to be a religious thing. I thought it was the corniest thing. I'm like, I'm not here for church. I'm here to stop using drugs and alcohol. And then somebody suggested the group can be your higher power. You can't do it yourself, but with the group, you're
Right.
stronger. So I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I could finally get with that. And so, like I said, anytime that I resist something, I know it's helpful for other people, and my mind's saying, "Ah, that's corny. I don't want to do that." I need to run towards that because it's going to be helpful for me too.
Right. Right.
All right, so we got off track. We were talking about your childhood. And this is this is what I love about doing the longer form content because it doesn't matter. We have
Mhm.
time. So we know what your childhood was like, what kind of kid you were growing up. You also told us about early signs of ADHD. I want to know about your diet growing up and if you noticed any patterns in how food may have affected your energy or focus.
Mhm. Mhm. So that's something else I've been thinking a lot about as well. So my diet growing up, I mean, my mom is a phenomenal cook and baker, so she bakes a lot. That's kind of what she was known for growing up is like, "Oh, when's Natasha's mom gonna bring baking for the class?" So there would have been a lot of baked goods growing up as a small child, but into my teenage years, I would really kind of go into like all or none eating. It would be like if I was really focused on something, I would just forget to eat. So I could easily go without eating and then remember to eat, and then I'm super hungry, so I'm just eating a ton of stuff. So there was probably some very unhealthy eating patterns that started when I would have been in high school, kind of carrying on to university and early adulthood, where I wasn't good with structure in terms of like when I should eat. And I mean, even as an adult, like I can say like 5 years ago, even when, you know, my husband, sometimes he would have to go work up north for a few weeks at a time. And he's primarily the cook in the house. He's a great cook. So he does a lot of the organizing when it comes to grocery shopping and cooking. So when he was away, it wouldn't be you know, out of the norm for my suppers to literally look like microwave popcorn. So my eating patterns were really, really terrible when I had to rely on myself. So, in terms of noticing how food impacted me, I don't think I was ever fully aware of it. I'm super aware of it now because I have a lot more structure to eating. I'm a lot more aware of what I'm actually putting into my body and how it's affecting me, but I think my eating patterns before were so all over the place that I don't think I would have been fully aware of how food is impacting me at all.
And who wouldn't love microwave popcorn for dinner? Everybody
Yeah.
would.
But sometimes it would be for like 3 days in a row.
You're reminding me, when I was a kid, I think maybe in middle school or high school, and I would sit on the couch downstairs, watch TV with the have you seen the big giant bag of popcorn you can get at the store?
Mm.
It's like a 3-foot bag of yellow popcorn, and I would just sit, and as I was eating it, I would roll the bag down so that I could get my hand in, and I remember doing that. It feels like for hours, just sitting on the couch and watching Garfield and whatever cartoons were on and just eating lots and lots of popcorn. Who wouldn't love that?
Yeah. I also think that's like a boredom thing though too, right? I almost think that that snacking kind of behavior is needing some kind of stimulation.
Yeah, absolutely, and I see that in myself sometimes, like, as I'm fasting, there'll be times where I'm thinking about food, I'm not hungry, but I just wanna eat, like, it's
Mhm.
something to do, and I see it in Samantha as well, because she has a hard time focusing on any one thing at a time, so when she's eating, she wants to have a screen in her front of her face, maybe she's FaceTiming with somebody, or sometimes she'll have the iPad with a game and the TV. I'm like, "Look, you gotta, like, let's just have one screen at least," and the eating is like it's just like an extra thing that she's doing. She wants to be doing 3 or 4 or 5 things at a time, and a lot
Yeah.
of times the eating is one of them. So, standard American diet is you grew up did you grow up in Canada?
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Yeah. But I think as a child, it would just been a lot of kind of home cooked meals. Like going out to a restaurant would have been some kind of a treat, or
right,
getting like fast food would have been a treat.
yeah,
So it really would have been like your standard, like some kind of a meat, some kind of a veg, some kind of a
right.
carb. Yeah.
Yeah, just that's, like, how just about everybody grew up for the most part, yeah.
Yeah. But I do remember as a child, on the rare occasion, if my dad brought home a box of donuts, I would open the box when no one was around and take a bite out of all of the donuts that I wanted to reserve for myself for later. So I definitely know I liked sweets because I was already like planning, if I take a bite of these donuts, no one else is going to eat them.
Did that work? Nobody would eat them because you
I
took a
don't
bite?
remember that part. I just remember, I just remember problem solving, how I get the donuts I want later so no one takes the good
Interesting.
ones.
Yeah, little schemer. Sounds like myself, and it sounds like Samantha too.
It's funny.
You start scheming. Yeah, I mean, and who doesn't love donuts? There's a place not far from here that makes donuts, and they're like I don't know what you would call it, like an artisan. Like they put
Oh,
crumbled
yeah.
bacon, and they're putting Fruit Loops on it and things like that. And like every time you go, they have something different. We used to get those all the time, and yeah, I mean, I would devour them to the point where I would get sick. Just imagine you have Fruit Loops on one, you have Cocoa Pebbles on it, you have bacon and honey or something on another one.
Yeah.
They're amazing. Yeah, they're amazing. All right, let's talk about your career now in mental health. What led you to study psychiatric nursing?
So I think, when I was in high school, I actually always wanted to be a police officer. And part of me going into becoming a psychiatric nurse is I thought that if I did a degree that was mental health related, that I could eventually go into the police force and specialize with forensics because I was always really interested and fascinated with human behavior. Why are people doing the things they do? So that idea of forensics, right? Like potentially working with criminals and trying to gain an understanding of the human mind and why are people, engaging in certain behaviors was just fascinating for me. So I initially took a degree in psychiatric nursing with the hopes of specializing in a police force working forensics. But once I was in the psych nursing program and I started doing practicums, it was really interesting and fascinating. So I kind of just stuck with it. I think the things that interested me about maybe wanting to be a police officer were a lot of the similar things that interested me in wanting to then just work in the mental health field and psychiatric nursing in general. So that's kind of like the short version of how I ended up becoming a psychiatric nurse. So it was almost like, not the original plan, but it's worked out. It's been a great career.
That's very, very cool. And as far as serving the public and helping people, you could have helped as a police officer, obviously, but you're
Mhm.
helping you're helping a lot more people in this path that you're on now. So
I
I'm
think
glad that you
so.
chose this way. What was your understanding of ADHD before your own diagnosis?
Oh, this is, yeah. It's wild for me to think about this, but my understanding of ADHD, I was so ignorant, Steven. I honestly thought when people were telling me they thought they had ADHD, I was just like, yeah, that's anxiety. Because I didn't know I had it. And I always thought I had bad anxiety. All of the symptoms I was dealing with, I thought were just symptoms of anxiety. So I very much was kind of the mind like, yep, like just work on your anxiety and you'll be better, like having zero concept of what ADHD actually is or what it entails. And I think too, like just that, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like maybe had that stereotypical mindset that ADHD is just for like little boys who are uncontrollable. Like, and that's all I knew. And it's really sad too, because as I figured out that I have ADHD and I gained so much of a better understanding about it, now I'm faced with all the time where I see a lot of clients where they've tried numerous treatments. I can see that they have ADHD. And then good luck trying to talk to their psychiatrist or their physician who doesn't have an understanding of ADHD. And I get it because I was that practitioner at one time and I was ignorant to it because I didn't understand it. So there is a part of me too where it's like looking back, I'm like, oh man, like I worked with so many people who thought they could have had it. And I was like, no, I think it's anxiety. And, did I do a disservice there? But I have to also tell myself that that's what I knew at that time. Right. And again, my role over the last 10 years has been primarily as a DBT therapist. So it's not even so much about what is your diagnosis, it's about what are the things you're struggling with and how do we develop skills to work through those struggles regardless of diagnoses. So
So if you were seeing a patient and maybe they thought they were ADHD, but you were thinking it was anxiety, does that change the way that you're trying to help them, the treatment that you're giving them?
I think now, yes. And the other thing too about DBT specifically is I modified a lot of DBT strategies specifically for myself. So even something like mindfulness, good luck. Before I could not sit 10 minutes mindfully, I would just get agitated and I would just stop and exercise. So I'm not going to tell clients to do that. So if people, were doing a DBT course, like if I was leading it, leading a group or working with somebody one on one, I usually would give two options. I'd be like, okay, you can either do it this way, right? Like you can do a 5-10 minute mindfulness exercise, or we can just have a random timer go off in your phone and you do a quick 30-minute snippet. Where am I? What am I thinking? What am I doing? Continue. Because that's how I had to do it. I had to do quick snippets of like, what am I actually doing? How do I formulate, or analyze this situation and then be effective in the situation I'm in? So I think in terms of the treatment, I already over time modified DBT in a way that I think it's just more ADHD friendly and it's easier to adapt for people who have ADHD. And I mean, the majority of the clients I try to take on my caseload do have ADHD. So, I mean, I've kind of, because I've learned how to modify, the way that I'm teaching this type of treatment, those are the types of clients that I'll usually take from our wait list.
I'm sure that your patients are benefiting from that. But what about back in the day before you had this understanding of ADHD? Would you have treated a person different if you thought they had just anxiety instead? What would be different? Because you wondered if you had done them a disservice. I'm just curious how the treatment would have been different.
Yeah, I think if anything, I don't think I would have delivered the treatment differently, but I might not have pushed to advocate to their physicians because this is what I'm seeing a lot now is we're getting clients who are coming who have ADHD. They're really struggling because now they're struggling with the group material. And, and a lot of these clients too, like I take a lot of clients who are with the military, and military in general, what I've heard is statistically they attract people who have ADHD. And where this gets really tricky for me is I can see a person has ADHD, but their psychiatrist is prescribing them all sorts of antidepressants or, medications that just aren't going to be helpful or beneficial. They go through multiple rounds of different medications, and the psychiatrists aren't willing to entertain the idea that they have ADHD. So that's where I come in a lot more and I'm like, no, like they have it because of this, this, and this. And I feel like I'm trying to be a stronger advocate now that I understand it. Doesn't mean I'm always going to achieve a good result, but at least my client knows that this could be a possibility. And if it's a possibility, how are we working with the symptoms a little bit more and understanding, that we need to modify things that are happening in your daily life. And that if you aren't productive for a few days, it doesn't mean you're lazy, right? So we start to get more into, how can you be a little bit easier on yourself and how can you work with that momentum when you have the momentum? And on the days where you're too scattered and you can't get anything, how do you work more into that radical acceptance? So I think in terms of me delivering treatment, that's the only thing that might be different is I feel like I try to advocate a lot more for the clients when I suspect they have ADHD.
That's amazing. Your patients are really lucky to have you.
Oh, thanks.
Cool. And so I would say confidently that you weren't doing anybody a disservice back then because the treatment was the same.
Hmm.
You shouldn't feel bad about that. All right, let's talk about your own diagnosis and your search for solutions. Was there a turning point that led to your ADHD diagnosis?
Yeah, because for me, Stephen, I never sought out to get a diagnosis specifically because, again, I was ignorant to even knowing what ADHD was. So why would I have ever even thought that I could have it? And I ended up getting diagnosed because my husband was starting to catch on to a lot of these repetitive kind of behaviors. And he would start to question, like, why can you excel in certain areas and then other areas you just can't, right? Like, why can you excel with building a business and you're working all these hours and you can, you know, myself and my business partner, we built two businesses in the last 5 years that have been doing great. And also in that period, I was also doing a master's degree. It was a psychology, neuroscience of mental health master's degree that I was doing online that I got distinction in. And, and part of that too, we were renovating, the exterior of our house. We have a cabin that's been under renovation for the last we're going into year 4, which has been an extensive renovation. So in my spare time, I am literally doing hands-on work renovating things. Like I am putting up poly, I am staining things, I am cutting wood and like putting on baseboards. Like I'm doing a lot of other things too. So it sounds really chaotic when it's like, oh, you can build these businesses and you can reno and you can, do well here, but why can't you go to the grocery store? Right? Like these basic things, it's like, why can't you do that? There would be times where he would like, I'd be coming home from work and he'd be like, can you go to the store just to pick up like, I don't know, milk or whatever? And I'd be like, no. No, I can't because I can't just do it on the fly on my way home. I'm already coming home. This is the plan. I can't pivot to like get to the parking lot, walk out of my car, go into the store. There were just certain things where it just felt like there was a block. So, it was him kind of not questioning, but being curious. Where there was one day in particular, we had to leave to meet up with some friends. And, the morning of, he was like, you know what, we need to get this done and this done. And can you do those things before we leave? So one of them was like walk the dog. It was for me to make sure I got, some of my cardio in, and something else that I wanted to do. I can't remember off the top of my head here. But lo and behold, like none of those things got done. I was still running late. He's frustrated. We're in the car and he's like, what is happening? Because in his mind, he thinks I'm just being like rebellious. Like, I'm just like, F you, I'm not going to do those things. So he was questioning. He's like, are you upset with me that I asked you to do those things? And I'm like, no. And I felt neutral. Like I had zero emotion. It's like the things weren't done, whatever, let's move on. right? It's like I just shifted into like, we're just going to pick up our friends. And he's like, no, he's like, something else is going on. He's like, what is happening? And I sat and I was like, I don't, like, I genuinely just don't know. Like, I feel nothing. I feel neutral. I don't have like an emotional attachment to anything that happened this morning. And then out of nowhere, I was just like, could I have ADHD? And he's like, I don't know. Could you? He's like, I don't, he's like, I don't work in mental health. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know anything about ADHD. So I pulled up like just the adult questionnaires were in the car, and I go to the first question, and it was something maybe along the lines of like, how often do you forget things? And I'm like, oh, I never forget anything. But he's like, but you forgot to do this and this morning. So I am literally going through the questions, and I don't even think I have it because I don't even remember. And every question, he's like, you did this, evidenced by this, you do this, you do this. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like, do I? So then I started tracking for 2 weeks all of the behaviors that I was exhibiting that would line up with the ADHD symptoms. And in the first week alone, it was like, I forgot my lunch like 3 out of 4 days that I was in the office. I forgot my computer charger one day, and I forgot to bring back these tea towels that were literally sitting by the back door for me to pick up on the way out. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I probably do forget things all the time. And when I forget something, it's just not detrimental enough for me to notice it. Right? If I forget my lunch, big deal. I can go grab lunch downtown. Right? I forget the tea towels, doesn't matter. There's still tea towels in the office. Forget the computer charger. Well, that could be problematic depending, but I can probably borrow a charger from somebody. Like, it's not like I was doing or forgetting things, that were so problematic that I was like, whoa, 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 like something's not right here. So, and I think part of that was just the environment and how the environment was able to shape to me too, right? Like, this might have been different if I was single, because maybe at some point I'd be like, I can't have microwave popcorn every single day for supper, something's wrong. Right? But because I have reliable, supportive people in my life who would help me with things, you know, it just wasn't, highly, highly problematic in my everyday environment. So from there, I kind of thought about it a bit more. I talked to my doctor about it. I got a referral to a psychiatrist. And even as I remember talking to the psychiatrist, I'm like, I don't know this, but this. And he's like, oh, that's interesting. Like, you probably could have it. So then he booked a follow up session. And part of the follow up is he wanted to talk to my husband for collateral. And then he put me back on the call. He's like, so yeah, you probably really do have ADHD. And you know what, Steven? It was very, very difficult thinking that because, again, I was ignorant to what ADHD was. So it really took me for a tailspin, being like, how could my mind be working so incredibly differently from the vast majority of people around me? Like, because it was something I had never even questioned up until a couple of years ago, just being like, you have ADHD and you had no idea. Like, that was hard. Like, it took me a lot of work to kind of shift around, like, how do I accept this? And I mean, there was denial because, I mean, even 8 months after that, I got a reassessment from a different practitioner just to be just to be sure. Like, it's almost like I just had such a hard time acknowledging that that could be the case. And I mean, it is. Like, I've you know come to a place where I can radically accept that that is a thing. That's what I've been dealing with. And once I found out I had ADHD and I did a lot more reading on it, and I could modify and make some changes in my life, that made it easier to work with my symptoms, things did get better. So, I mean, it was helpful for me to get the diagnoses, but at the time it was really hard to accept it.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially with it coming so late in life and with you being so high functioning.
Mhm.
And by the way, congratulations on distinction in your master's. That's amazing.
Oh, thanks.
And everything else you have going on in your life. The cabin, it sounds amazing. I want to talk to you about that another time. And as you're telling your story, I keep hearing about your husband and how I'm thinking how lucky you are to have him. And
Yeah.
because he can witness what's going on, because you're saying that, like, you forgot your lunch, it's no big deal, but he's able to point out, like, "Yeah, but you've been exhibiting all these behaviors," and it's you're really fortunate to have him.
Mhm, mhm. Oh, I fully agree. Yeah. And he's an engineer, so he's very, like, more reasonable, rational, so he's just very factual. He's like, "But I observed this and this and this and this," and then it's like, I can't argue a fact when it's when it's actually true.
What was your experience with stimulant medications, and why did you start looking for alternative solutions?
Mhm. So with the stimulants, when I was suspecting that maybe I could have ADHD, kind of leading up to the psychiatry consult that I had, that eventually led to the diagnoses, I was of the mindset where it's like, I just want the diagnoses and I'm not going to try meds. And then a couple of people were like, it's just a stimulant medication, give it a go. If you don't like it, don't take it, kind of thing. And when I started taking it, I felt so calm that I was like, okay, I could use this effectively. Like, I can actually be calm, I can relax. I don't know. It's interesting because I don't know if it actually helped with my productivity, but it definitely made me feel more relaxed and I could be more mindful and a lot more present. So the periods where I took it were really helpful, but then there were drawbacks that happened, right? So, like, the medication wears off in the evenings. I still need to be like a reasonable human being in the evening, right? And you'd get this crash effect. So it'd be the tidal wave would come, you'd get all these racing thoughts, you'd feel really anxious, on edge, just it wasn't a pleasant experience. So then I started kind of playing around with the times of when I wanted to take the meds. Because here was the interesting thing: I already built a really good habit and routine for my workday. My workday wasn't compromised, is in my opinion, but it was more so the evenings, because the evenings are free times, they're unstructured, and it was trying to really figure out, like, how do I want to utilize that time so that I'm not sitting, either wanting to take a nap when I get home or watching like 5 hours of Real Housewives of whatever. And probably stacking at the same time, right? Like, I'm an ambitious person, I want to be productive, that also carries through to my evenings. So then I would take the meds at a little bit of a different time, so at least I could get some benefit in the evening. So that at least helped with that crash component. But the other really bad, effect that I had from it is it suppressed my appetite, and I like food. So I would go like on a vacation or something and everything would just taste like cardboard. And it's like, this is just not enjoyable. Like, I'm not enjoying this experience. The other thing too is, right from the get-go, I tried to look up studies on stimulant medication long term. Couldn't really find anything reliable. So that was always in the back of my mind too, being like, could there be detrimental effects in the long term for me if I continued taking the medication? Right? So, and there was a piece too where over time I felt like it really started to suppress my creativity and I wasn't getting all of these fun, exciting ideas. So I probably took it consistently for about a year, and then I was off of it for a few months. And I had already thought, could the ketogenic diet help with my symptoms? Because I trialed the ketogenic diet back in 2017 when I had a client stay that it helped them. And I did one for about 6 weeks at that time. And I remember feeling really good. I remember my mood felt good. It was the clearest I had ever felt. But I stopped doing that diet at that time because I relied so much on dairy that my body didn't feel good. I felt really bloated all the time. So I didn't know if it was worth the benefit. You know, so, once I was on the medication, took it for a year, kind of went off of it because I was like, I want the old me back in some sense. Like, I don't want to feel suppressed. Like, I like feeling calm, yes. And I also like having fun, innovative ideas and being ambitious and doing things spontaneously, which I lost a lot of that. And then reflected on this idea, could a ketogenic diet help based on that past experience I had had? But at that time, looked again at research, there was nothing really there or available. And I think that's the one regret I have now, is I shouldn't have questioned it, because I feel like I questioned it potentially for about a year. And I had even told my husband, I wonder if a keto diet would help, because I remember how good I felt when I trialed it before. But I felt like I had to rely on the research and I should have just relied on my instinct. So it was last year when I saw, I think it was Diary of a CEO podcast. Chris Palmer was the guest speaker. And I watched that podcast and it was just like, boom, like there it is. That is the validation I was looking for. And then I think it was like a month or two later, I went keto and I've been on a ketogenic diet since.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, Chris Palmer's been a big part of a lot of our stories. He was
Mm-hmm,
he was
mm-hmm.
the first one that I heard talking about using a ketogenic diet on his schizoaffective patient.
Yeah.
Um, I'm surprised that there's not long-term studies on stimulant use because I thought we've been using them for a long time. So I'm surprised to hear that.
Yeah. We have been using them for a long time. But there was just nothing that I could find that was like validating enough for me to be like, I would feel comfortable using these long term.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sounds like it's interesting the way you describe your experience with stimulants because I've never heard anybody say it like this before, but it sounds like how people get affected by antidepressants. Like if it was
Mhm,
made
mhm.
your food bland, so you're
Yes.
not enjoying life, and it's taking away your creativity. A lot of people, myself included, would say when you take antidepressants, you may be depressed and you might not be depressed anymore, but then you can't feel joy either,
Yes.
and you can't be creative. And all the years that I took so many different medications, a lot of times the reason I was getting off was because I'm not able to do the things I enjoy in life. I'm not writing poetry. I'm not playing music. I'm not creative whatsoever.
Yeah.
Sure, I don't want to unalive myself anymore, which is the reason I started taking them. But it's like a numb kind of limbo state to be in. And if
Yes.
you're somebody like you and I, and you have passions in life and you want to be productive and you take that passion away, like it's just not good enough for most of us.
Yeah, you're coasting, you're not living.
All right. So you heard Chris Palmer. You decided to, in your typical style, you jumped head first. You dove, right? You were all in.
I was all in. So, right before I did the keto diet, we actually went on a ski trip with a bunch of friends, so I was just like, "That's gonna be kinda my last hurrah." And then when I come back from this trip, I'm gonna do the keto diet. And coincidentally enough, like two of the friends had also heard of the brain energy theory and had listened to the same podcast. So I was talking to them about it and was like, yeah, I think I'm going to start a keto diet. And they were very supportive. They were like, this is so interesting. So when I came back from that, yeah, it was basically all in. I kind of roughly knew what to do because, again, I had done it in 2017. But I spent a lot more time figuring out what other types of foods I could eat. Because when I did it before, again, I was relying a lot on dairy for the fats. So I did a lot more, I guess, maybe research around like what other kinds of fats can I incorporate. And then I used the Carb Manager app, is what I utilized. And then at first, I used to test the ketones, the urine strips, the keto sticks, because Keto Mojo was not available in Canada at that time. And then once it became available, I got a Keto Mojo and then was able to do the blood testing. But the strips were sufficient to see at least that I was producing ketones. Like, and it seemed, and the other thing too is like, I could feel the effects right away. And I know it's different for everybody, but like within a few days, it was like, boom, like I'm in, like I am here.
That's great. Yeah. So the urine strips, they're effective, especially in the beginning. And what I tell people is I find them to be a yes or no answer to the question,
Mhm.
am I in ketosis or not? They'll tell you yes or no. But based on your hydration levels, they could be way darker than and make it look like you have a ton of ketones and you're really not that deep in ketosis.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, they're fine. And then if you really want to test, you should be using a Keto Mojo or some other blood test so you could test your blood ketones and glucose as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
So can you tell us what your diet was like right before you changed it? Not including this ski trip, but just like was it this typical thing that you already explained?
Oh,
What
no,
was it like
right.
before? And then what changes did you make to make it ketogenic?
Yeah, okay, so my diet before, oh, probably the last couple of years leading up to that, it was terrible. It was forgetting my lunches. So then ordering like some kind of DoorDash meal. And even the meals weren't that bad. Like I'd usually get like sushi or a pita or something that I thought was healthier. Um, but yeah, honestly, it was like so some kind of like something prepared for a restaurant or fast food, probably 3, 4 days a week, once a week on my way home, driving through a drive-through and getting like a burger somewhere. So like super not healthy. And that was the norm for a while because I couldn't get myself together to ever organize food to take to work. And then by the time I was leaving work, I was hungry. So it's just grabbing what you can, you know. Weekends were fine because my husband's always organized and well and does good with cooking on the weekends. But yeah, that's shifted a lot because now it's like we are on it. Like I know exactly what I can eat in the fridge. There's even things that I could just have on the go, right? Like so things like even hard boiled eggs. You know, if I if I don't have a well prepared lunch for work, it's like I'll grab an avocado, a couple hard boiled eggs. Sometimes I have bacon in the fridge. Good enough. Take it. Add some extra fats, some butter.
That sounds great. So do you remember what changes you made initially to go ketogenic?
Yeah. So what I did, because I struggled so much with the organizational piece, I found 3 or 4 just keto casserole recipes that had the right macros. And every Sunday I would make a casserole, divvy it up. That would be kind of my lunch for the week. And then supplementing with those other things I said, like avocado, egg, bacon, like those were just staples. And then in the evening for supper, my husband always makes supper anyway, so it's usually like just some kind of a meat. So it's like I'd have a meat and a veg and add extra butter to it. So that was just I just made it as simple as possible because I wouldn't have had the capacity to go all out. I couldn't even follow a recipe before. And now I'm so much better with that. Like I will make keto recipes all the time and I don't struggle with it and they turn out good because I follow it properly.
That's great. I love what you're saying there. So you kept it simple and
Yes.
you planned and you were prepared. So
Yes.
and that's what I tell people that I'm trying to help. Like you can either find a couple of meals that work for you and you prepare them ahead of time. And that's what I typically try to do. When I'm doing my best, I have my next 3 or 4 days meals already bowled up and in the fridge and ready to go.
Mhm. Mhm.
I have everything weighed and tracked and it's all ready to go. Prepare as much ahead of time as possible. And I give the same advice to people like if you're going to be say you're going out Friday night to a restaurant, don't don't guess like it's Monday, you're going out Friday, let's go look at the menu, let's see what you're going to eat and let's track
Yeah.
it. And then you may need to compensate by having some more fat before or more fat. Like if you're going to a steakhouse, you're just going to have a steak and veggies. Maybe you need to have a little more fat before you go to the restaurant.
Yes. Exactly.
Planning and preparing is like the key to success.
Yeah.
So you said you felt better right away, right?
I did. So I should clarify, probably in day 3, day 4, I noticed the cognitive benefits right away, but there were weird kind of symptoms I had. So I almost had I mean, I would consider it like a hypomania. Like my sleep was really disrupted for that first week, which is not the norm for me. Like usually, I can conk out at like whatever time I want and I'm like out until I wake up. Like I don't have sleep problems. But my sleep got really like disrupted, a lot of like lucid dreaming, waking up a lot, and had this boundless energy. And remember having this, and I remember thinking like, I feel so good, like in my body, that I was like, I almost feel too good. So I'm like, I wonder if it could be almost like a hypomania. And then I found out later that some people can have that kind of an effect. But there was this moment where I was in a consult meeting with the other DBT practitioners, and we were like in our conference room and the light was streaming in and we're doing this mindfulness exercise and I'm looking around and I'm like, everybody looks beautiful. And then I'm like, that's it. I'm totally hypo. And that only lasted for a few days and then it settled and then I felt pretty good. There was like a couple initially, maybe the first day or two, a little bit of like brain fog I kind of noticed. But, for me, I didn't have the worst transition. I know some people can get super sick, with keto flu and they can feel terrible for weeks. But for me, that just wasn't my experience. I had a really good experience, maybe a too good of an experience, but it was fun while it lasted.
It's good, and I'm glad you're sharing that because you hear a lot of horror stories out there, and I've been working with a lot of new people lately, and it's not always that easy for people,
No,
you know? And
no.
what you're describing about the hypomania is that can be true for a lot of people. It's like if you're in AA and you first quit alcohol, they call it the pink cloud. You just feel so good after like the
Mhm.
first 30 days. I've noticed that for myself. If I am out of ketosis, that getting back in, I can experience that, the hypomania.
Yes,
I
yep.
get, I might, it's too much energy, disrupted sleep, lucid dreaming, like you're saying. And it can be good because I can be very creative and I can have, um, I could be like rehearsing an interview that I'm about to do and come up with some questions, but it's 4 a.m. and here I am getting up at 4 a.m. to write down this question I just thought of or something.
Yeah, yeah,
But it can be detrimental too, because it can be real hypomania for me, which means maybe I'm making some irresponsible spending decisions
yeah.
or, just irresponsible choices that are not really in my best interest because I'm feeling so good.
Mhm,
And I've had
mhm.
times in the past where I was really deep in ketosis, really high ketones for a while. And then I feel like, well, I need to treat myself. So then I end up going and having something I shouldn't. So it can lead to
Yeah.
mistakes and for somebody with mental health issues, you do have to be careful. And it's helpful if you can have a doctor or at least a friend or a spouse or somebody there at your side to help you when you're going through that transition period so you can manage that hypomania.
Mhm, mhm. And at least for me too, like, I was well versed enough to know what was happening and that I would be okay in a few days. So it was just like, "Ride it out and you'll probably be fine."
Right. Yeah. So you told us that you were tracking your food, and I'm wondering if you've experimented with different macro ratios. Have you tried, like, do you know where your fat is now, and have you tried different fat percentages?
Mhm. So I feel like as long as I'm 75% fat, I'm good and I'm producing a good ketone level. So that's
Have you
what I'm
tried any
looking.
higher than that? Have you ever been in the 80s before?
You know what? I would have to go back and look, like, off the top of my head. I'm not really sure. I'm sure there's days that I have. There might be days where it's like I'm having, like, coconut oil or MCT oils or heavy cream or something the majority of the day and then maybe just only eating a big lunch. So some of those days I might actually have a higher fat content. I would
Okay.
have to go back and look though.
But it's never something you did deliberately.
No.
Okay. Yeah, I always like to ask people that because for me, I could do your keto and I wouldn't be bipolar. I
Mhm.
wouldn't have bipolar symptoms and I wouldn't have substance abuse and the things that really plagued me. But I'm not my best that way. I'm still going to be angry and irritable probably.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not going to have the sense of calm that I need to handle life and I'm going to be at like an 8 on the 10 scale probably, a 7 or an 8.
Okay.
When I do my diet the way I do it, where I'm aiming for 90% fat on most days, I can jump from an 8 to a 10, and for me, there's a huge difference. And I didn't know that until I tried it. I always thought that I was at a 10, but then it turns out I was really at an 8. So I'm just curious for someone like you, if it's something you would maybe consider in the future is like try a week at 85% or maybe even
Mhm,
just 80%
mhm.
and just to see how it feels, just to see what's out there.
Yeah. See, I almost feel like I kind of thought of it in the reverse way, like, I necessarily wasn't like, "How do I tweak things to optimize my health?" It was more so noticing where the baseline was so that I didn't feel worse again. So it was almost like that, like, where do I know my baseline is? Like, if I'm below point 0.8 on ketones, I'm getting really anxious and I feel terrible again. So that's kind of what I've noticed. So as long as I know I'm in a range where I can be just over 1, I'm probably gonna be okay. It doesn't make me feel the sense of calm, if my ketones were, like, over 2, I'm gonna feel a lot more calm, but sometimes I like feeling not calm. Like, that's what I'm used to. I'm used to feeling not calm the vast majority of my life, so those periods where I feel super calm can almost be uncomfortable.
Oh, interesting. See,
Yeah,
for me, I've spent basically my entire life being angry and irritable. And to me, the exact opposite of that is being calm and happy. And that's what I'm looking for.
yeah,
And especially with a child that's got her own struggles and, life is always throwing curveballs at you.
yeah,
And I don't want to drop a box as I'm walking and kick it. I want to drop it and be like, huh, look, I just dropped the box. I guess I'm going to have to pick that up now.
right.
And that's how I want to be. So that's why I'm looking for that extra sense of, and there's a big difference for me when I feel calm like that and the way and how easy life gets too, I've noticed, is
Mhm,
that I can have a to-do list with 8 things on it, and when I have that extra sense of calm and I'm in a deeper ketosis, I can go through the 8 things and I'm looking for stuff to do, and then at the end of the day, I reflect back and I say, "Wow, I did like 12 things today. It feels like I did nothing. But
Right.
when I can still do the regular keto kind of like you're doing, and I'm gonna have this to-do list of 8 things, I'm gonna look at it and be like, "Nope, I don't wanna do this. I don't wanna do that."
Mm,
Maybe I'll do 2 of the things, and I'll look back at the end of the day and I'll say, "Wow, I only did 2 things and it felt like I did a dozen things. It was terrible." It was so life becomes so much easier for me when I'm in that depth of
right.
ketosis. And it this is just a good illustration of how keto is different for everybody. Just like I said in my intro, we're all different people. We're all going to have a different keto. It's going to be different for all of us.
Mhm, mhm.
Your job is really to find your own path and to find what works for you best.
Yeah, absolutely. Because for me, I think the keto, what it's really helping me with, because again, if I feel too calm, it almost feels it's just a feeling I'm not familiar with because I always had this like pent up energy. Like I always felt like I was gonna like spontaneously combust at any given moment because I had so much of this pent up like anxiousness and ruminating. So as soon as that subsided, I think I just felt like I'm good. Life is so much more manageable that I don't think, maybe that's why I've never tried to shoot for those higher levels because I feel like I'm okay as is and I feel really good as is. So, and when I do hit those higher levels, it just feels so it just feels so different. I'm just not used to it. So maybe I need like to do some like prolonged exposure around it or something.
But you're doing it the right way. You're testing your ketones and you know how you feel at a certain level
Mhm.
and you know where you want to be. So that's what's most important. For me, it's like the calm for me is not uncomfortable, and that's what I want, and, like, it could be as simple as I'm driving on the road and somebody is just riding up my ass behind me, and how
Mm,
am I just like, "Oh, wow, this guy must be late for work. Okay, well, whatever. I'm just gonna pull over and let him go by." Or am I gonna be like, this MFJO, get off, and am I gonna slow down? Am I gonna how am I reacting to that situation? There's a big difference there, and I spent most of my life reacting the wrong way to those situations.
yeah.
And that's why I want that calm. And I want, like, if somebody comes up behind me and it's like it doesn't even phase me, like, oh, I might chuckle. I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Right.
They're probably late for work. Yeah, I'm just gonna pull over and let them go. So let them get on their way. That's what I'm looking for. And that's why I need to be at that deeper level. For me, it doesn't necessarily always correspond to a high ketone level though.
Mm,
Right? Because I cycle my stuff a lot. We've spoken about this.
yeah.
And I have a couple of days at 90 and then I lift weights and then the following day I might be at 80 and I might eat a huge meal. So then the following day, my ketones are not in the threes or fours, or they might be in the mid ones, but I still feel great.
Right.
So for you, you feel like, does it really correlate? Like you said if you're below 1, you might not feel as well?
Mhm. Usually for some reason I've pinpointed it at point 0.8, but
Point 8.
I've just noticed whenever it's under point 0.8, I feel horrible.
Really?
Yeah,
So you could just be a 1 every day and you would be fine.
I would be fine. Yeah.
That's interesting. I still need to play around with it more because the way I do things, I'm up and down, and then I throw a day of fasting in, and my body's weird. Like I don't produce a lot of ketones normally when I fast. They're just kind of average
Okay.
usually. So I might have high ketones for a day and then fast, and then they come down. But I typically feel the same. But if I look at my numbers, like I was 4.4 this morning, and then a couple days ago I was like 1.5 or whatever, and like I could feel the same at both of those levels, but
Right.
I'm not typically going below. I'm not really getting myself to a point 0.8. If I am, that means I'm doing something wrong. So
Right.
I probably do have a baseline. Now you've got me curious. I kind of want to figure out what is my baseline. What I like is I like to have my glucose somewhere in the mid 80s and my ketones somewhere in the mid twos or
Mhm.
lower twos. So if I'm like 85 glucose and like 2.2 ketones, and I did that every day, I know that I would be feeling really good and I would have enough calm and happiness to navigate life the way I want to.
Right, right.
Right, so how about for holidays and special occasions? How do you navigate those? Do you have treats?
You know what? No, I feel good with what I'm eating. I think at first when I was transitioning onto the diet, I would make like keto cheesecakes or things like that, but now I just feel like I'm good. I don't need to rely on anything special like that. So I don't particularly find it hard to navigate now. Maybe when I would have started, it might have been a little bit more difficult, but yeah, I don't really struggle in that way. I'm good with kind of my staple foods, and that feels good for me.
I love that. That's an excellent message to put out there to people that they can also get to that place someday if they do this long enough. All right, I want to talk about the power of fasting now.
Yeah.
This is something that you know that I'm very passionate about, and you and I have been fasting together now for a couple of weeks, and it's been really cool being able to share some of my little tips and tricks that I've picked up, and you've been inspiring me greatly, like seeing you add on to your hours and doing your first time of a full day of no eating, and it's been awesome. So I want to know, when did you first start experimenting with fasting?
So I feel like for the last few years, I always kind of would do or try to do intermittent fasting, but nothing longer than a day. And last year I actually have it here. Mindy Pelz wrote specifically for women, it's Fast Like a Girl. I wrote that or I read it last summer and I was like, oh, wow, there's all these benefits to fasting. I'm interested in it, but I just never got to the point of implementing it. So I can't thank you enough because you helping me out with that has been so helpful because it's been very, very beneficial. So, a couple weeks ago, I kind of did my first 24-hour fast, and then it's been increasing to the 36 plus now. Um, and it's been really eye-opening because there are periods where I kind of like the challenge of just getting through a little hunger crave here and there and strategizing like when I feel this way, these are the things I can do just to get through it because that moment will pass. So there's a lot of DBT in that, right? The moment will pass, you'll get through it. Um, but also the benefits and like my ketones got to levels that I had never even thought would be possible. I think after that first 24, they were like 4.7 and I had never gotten anything over a 3 before. Um so it was just kind of like it's interesting just to see the experience in your body and just how much more connected I felt to my surroundings in that state. And then for me too, actually, like, you and I were kind of talking about this, but what I noticed for myself is the day that I break the fast is usually actually the day where I feel the most benefit. Because prior to that, like when I'm in a fast and when it's usually, I'm noticing it's around that 20-hour mark, I almost get like a dissociative kind of feeling about it. Like I almost feel like I'm really light, I'm kind of floating, kind of just like a strange, surreal experience. And then when I finally break that, I feel very grounded, very present, and I feel great and very like I noticed like that really helps my productivity. So it's something that I'm going to continue doing because I feel like I'm getting a lot of benefit from it. And I think I got more benefit from it than I would have initially realized was even possible.
That's so cool. I was really happy when you posted those ketone numbers and you said that those were your highest ever. That's really cool. Yeah. So what are your favorite fasting strategies, and what do you do to make fasting easier?
I made sure to really load up on the electrolytes before the fast. I don't know if you're supposed to do that or not, but I did. um, and I think you helped me a lot with planning out the timing, right? So I found it easier if it's like the day kind of before fasting, if I just have a solid, cutoff time. And then that app you were telling me about, the Easy Fast, just even like clicking start on an app, it's like, okay, I'm in the zone. Like I don't want to break it. So that's helped a lot, I think, just with accountability too, is having that app. And then obviously having the support, from yourself. I know we recently did a fast too with Janet. So just having people to kind of bounce things off of and help cheerlead each other on has been very, very helpful.
Yeah, it adds a whole new dimension when you have somebody to fast with.
Yeah. And it's strangely fun. I don't know. I don't know what other people do for fun these days, but that is very fun for me.
No, I think it's cool, and we fasted on Sunday together, and the way I woke up Sunday, I felt like there's no way I'm fasting today. I was hungry, and then you started the WhatsApp group with the 3 of us in there, and then as soon as we got in there and I saw that you guys were fasting, I'm like, "All right, that's it. I'm fasting too." It's just for me, that's how it works. It's that simple. It's like, "All right, you guys are doing it. I'm doing it too."
Yeah.
And we shared throughout our day as we were doing things, and Janet posted a video of herself outside. I went to the lake and I did a walk, and I posted a video. I was like, we just kind of show each other how we're navigating our way through the day and cheering each other on. And for me, it makes it that much either. I've been fasting with friends since I think like September. I have a Discord group with a couple of close friends, and we we were fasting like Sundays and Thursdays for a while. I love doing the Sunday thing. We've spoken about this.
Mhm,
Sundays are like
mhm.
it's my favorite day to fast. It's typically a down day. We don't have a lot going on, and especially during the fall when it's football season because there's football coming on. So that's taking up like 3 hours of my day. If I'm a New York Giant fan, so I'm sitting there watching in misery because they suck so bad lately. But it's still taking up a couple hours of my day, and I really like how the Sunday fasting fits in. And then you mentioned yourself that you wake up Monday and you're like you're ready to go. You're just like
Mhm, mhm.
energized and ready for your week. And if I'm doing my schedule the way I like, I'm waking up Monday morning, I'm like 40 hours fasted. I go lift weights and I'm gonna have my best lift of the whole week fasted. And then I'm gonna eat a couple hours later. And yeah, it's just a great way to start the week.
Mhm.
So yeah, if anybody's out there is thinking about fasting and you want to join up, hit one of us up and
Mhm.
you can join in our little fasting buddy group.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's go beyond ADHD and talk about some other benefits of keto. Have you noticed any unexpected improvements since start?
Yeah. So, I would always have joint pain in my knees, which is completely gone now. So that's one of the first things I noticed. Just in terms of, like, gastro issues, I don't think I realized how badly I had gastro issues before until I changed the diet, and now I have none. So, that's been a big improvement. But the big one that really honestly stands out is I was recently snowboarding with my friend a couple months ago, and just my endurance, like how much more endurance I have, was mind-blowing. Like I could spend the whole day snowboarding, had a quick like 1 hour break where I just like ate part of a Cobb salad, like mostly all the fatty stuff that was on top, and then just went back out until the lifts closed. And my friend, so cute too, because she's like, "How did you do all of that fasted?" Because the day before we also did this hike, and she's like, "I'm like amazed." So she's been doing keto since that trip.
Awesome. That's great.
So, yeah, so that's I feel like that's probably the biggest benefit that I'm noticing aside from the mental health stuff is just like my endurance. Like it's incredible.
And that's what a lot of people will report, although it's important to note that you don't get that right away.
Oh yeah,
If you're
it
just
took
starting
several months.
keto, yeah. If you're just starting keto, you're not gonna get that right away. Your energy is gonna tank probably,
Yes.
especially if you're lifting weights and you're doing hard workouts, your workouts are gonna suffer for a little while. But once you get through that, the same thing happened to me. Once you get through that, you will find like this endless energy. I used to always feel like when I was non-keto and eating carbs, I would go out do my lift in the gym and after like 45 to 60 minutes, I'm done at that point. I've used all my glycogen and I don't have anything left in the tank. But now I said that I have my best lift of the week when I'm 40 hours fasted and I will feel like I have endless energy and my workout will increase. I'm getting to the 45-minute to the 60-minute mark and my workout is increasing. My energy I feel like is increasing and if I'm not careful, I could overdo it very easily because I feel so good in the moment that I could keep lifting. I could easily do more than I should do. That's how it gets. Do you have any symptoms or challenges with your ADHD that didn't improve with keto?
I would say my symptoms aren't completely eliminated, but it's probably a good 90 to 95% better. So I mean, and I feel like it's hit all areas. Like there's no residual symptom where it's like I wish it fixed that one thing. Like nothing like that exists for me.
That's great. I'm so happy for you. I'm happy that you found this and it's working so well.
Mhm.
All right, next up, I want to talk about your practical strategies. What are your top 3 strategies for maintaining focus and mental clarity?
So I mean, the ketogenic diet obviously is a big staple here, so that's one of the three strategies. The other one too is just movement and walking. Like if I can like get a good walk outside, that really just grounds me and helps me regroup and refocus. So that's a huge one. The fasting really has improved that too quite a bit. So I feel like that's maybe my new strategy that I'm going to be pulling in a lot more for that. So I want to say right now it's probably those are the three is going to be, you know, the diet, movement, and then the fasting.
Perfect. And you're talking about walking, which is one of my passions too. I absolutely love walking. And you can look up the science and you can see that your blood sugar will go down. And I've proven this over the years when I've worn CGMs or I've tested my blood before and after. Great to walk after a meal. I love walking after a meal if I can. And the advice that you're or the strategies as advice to people, it's like anybody, pretty much anybody can walk.
Yeah.
And for me, I talk about my tenets in life and I put the ketogenic diet and fasting together because it's about what I'm putting in my mouth and how often. I feel like they go together. To me, I would consider them one tenet or one strategy. What am I eating and how often am I eating it? And I look at fasting like a car wash for your brain. I've said
Mhm.
this before that my I don't have a garage for my car. It's outside all day long and it's baking in the sun and it's getting rained on and it gets bird poop. And if you just let that accumulate, your car's gonna look like crap in a couple of months if you don't wash it. But if you wash it every week, it's gonna look pretty good even though it's outside. So I feel like it's the same thing for my brain. I
Yeah.
fast if I fast once one full day a week of not eating, getting to bed without eating is like a car wash for my brain and it keeps my brain clean and looking shiny and nice.
Yeah, I like that. It's like a little nice a nice little metaphor.
Right, and it's something like you could go as far as you want with the metaphor if your car is outside and it's getting bird pooped. If you washed it once a month, it would still look pretty good,
Yeah.
once every 4 weeks. But if you did every week, it's gonna look really good, especially if you're doing the tire shine and you're cleaning the inside. Like, if you're doing a full cleaning,
The
your car's
wax
gonna look
job.
pretty good every time. Yeah, exactly. Do you have any advice to give someone considering the keto diet for ADHD? Because you see keto for bipolar
Yeah.
and for depression, but you don't really see it for ADHD. What advice
Mhm.
would you give to someone?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think the advice is just give it a try. Give it 4 weeks and see what happens. Right? Like what do you honestly, what do you have to lose? If it could improve your life, amazing. If not, that's fine too. You gave it a shot, right? But it's also I also want to be clear though that you have to set it up in the right ways. There's a lot of people who think they're doing a ketogenic diet, but if you're not tracking the ketones or the ketones are too low, you might not get those benefits. So I've seen that happen quite a few times where, people are like, "Oh, I'm not getting like the clarity yet." And then it's like I'm looking at their levels. It's like, "Well, you've been baseline point 0.5, point 0.6. Like we got to jack your ketones up." So just because you're doing the diet, it doesn't mean you're doing the diet therapeutically.
Great advice. And with that, I would add not only tracking your ketones, but tracking your food. I would start there. For
Yeah.
most people, I would start with get an app, weigh and track your food, and see where your total fat percentage is at. Because even if you're someone who's not testing, because there's people out there that either can't afford the strip, so they don't want to prick their finger, and that's fine. I feel like you can do it without that, and you can do it off your fat percentage. If your fat percentage is only at 70%, you're not getting clarity. Let's go up to 75 for a week or
Yep.
two and see how you feel.
Yep. That's a good point.
Do you have any advice for making the transition into this way of eating easier?
I mean, I think the simpler the better, but that's just what had to work for me. So like I said, it was just having like the casseroles and rotating that and then the other staple foods. And like the first 2 weeks were literally that, just like eating the same thing over and over and over and just being okay with that. And then as I felt better and as I was learning more, I could incorporate a lot more. But I feel like that was just the key for me is just the simpler method worked.
That's excellent. And that's the same advice that I would give to anybody. It doesn't work for everyone. Not everybody can go that route. But if you're the type of person where you're doing 2 meals a day, if you're doing a breakfast and a dinner and your breakfast could be the same every day, that just makes it so much easier,
Yes.
especially when it comes to weighing and tracking and all that. Like if you're doing 2 eggs and 3 slices of bacon and some butter, you do it once and you put it in the app and you see that your macros are good, then you can just have that same meal every day. And all you got to do is copy and paste in the app every day.
Mhm,
You don't have to
mhm.
weigh and track it every single time. Simple, make it fit your life, especially if you're someone who is not used to weighing and tracking your food. I've been doing this for many, many years. I used to weigh and track my food long before I knew about ketogenic diet for weightlifting and stuff like that. So
Oh, okay.
it was no big deal for me, and I enjoy it. It's a part of my life, and I've been doing it for Samantha for years too. But if you're somebody brand new, some people just don't want to. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to track, and I understand that. Me, I'm fortunate. I have spreadsheets and I have books that I'm writing in, and I'm tracking like crazy, like a geek with the data, and I love it. Are you ready to get into our closing?
Yeah. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm absolutely ready. Yeah. So I have some
Okay.
closing questions that I ask all my guests. And the first two are posed to your younger self. The first one is going to be related to diet and mental health, and the second one not related to mental health. All right. So the first one is, what is a piece of advice you'd give to your younger self before you discovered this diet? Something that would have gotten you through the tough times.
I've been thinking a lot about this question. So I almost like what's coming up for me is just almost a mantra just to not be so hard on myself. Because I think the toughest times I would have encountered are the times where I would have been most self critical. And I think that really, really would have weighed on my mental health at one time.
Yeah, that's great advice. And someone like you or someone like me, we could be considered perfectionists. And if we're not perfect, then it's not good enough.
Yeah.
And then it's very, very easy to get down on yourself and be hard on yourself. So, my second question is similar, but not related to mental health, just more of a life lesson. If you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think it would be pro- probably to trust yourself more, but that everything's going to turn out the way it's intended to. I think looking at my life right now, I think everything happened the way it was supposed to happen, and I'm in a really good place. So it's almost you have to trust that that's a possibility.
That's a great answer. I can't help but think that that's kind of like the foo-foo kind of thing we were talking about in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What a bunch of foo-foo. No, I'm kidding. It's amazing advice that you could give to your younger self, and what I like about these questions is that these answers are appropriate for everybody regardless of where they're at in their life,
Mhm,
you
mhm.
know? Don't be so hard on yourself and trust that things are gonna work out the way they should.
Yeah. Because I mean, there would have been definitely a point in several points in my life, Stephen, where I would have been really stuck in that, thinking things are never gonna work out the way I want, and that I should be somehow doing something differently or better and really trying to push myself, but also being extra critical.
Yeah, exactly. I can agree with you. So I've got one more question. It's a question that should encourage you to share a broader, more philosophical insight or a life lesson that ties into your experience with the ketogenic lifestyle and provide something meaningful and potentially even new after our in-depth interview.
Mhm.
Call this my fat fueled philosophy question.
Oh,
What's one powerful piece of fat fueled philosophy, a life lesson, or a mantra that you've embraced on your ketogenic journey and that you think could inspire our listeners?
I really this is kinda going back to the frou-frou idea here. But but I honestly do believe that everything comes together when it's meant to, and things are about timing, because I think about, that moment where I saw the Chris Palmer podcast, and that started a cascade, right? So that was the timing for me where I had to make a change. And who knows, someone from this podcast, like someone listening to this podcast could have the same experience where they're learning something new and it could start a cascade. So there's something about I don't know if it's like when you hit those higher ketone levels, but there's such a level of feeling connected that there's almost something spiritual about it. So I think that's where I'm starting to see things come together more, and I can just almost let go to that and just be like, things are just going to unfold how they're supposed to unfold, and it's okay. I can go with it.
That was an excellent answer. Thank you. That sounds very mindful of you.
Yeah. I'm well practiced.
All right. So I know that you know what's coming next. We're going to do the tagline next. And you're finally the first guest who knows what's coming and has something prepared. I knew this day would come, and I've enjoyed all the times where I ask a guest, like, "Have you seen my shows?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, "Okay, that's great because you have no idea what's coming." But I'm really looking forward to this. So I'm going to take my headphones out. I won't be able to hear you for a second while I get
Okay.
my pen up on. Ever since I found out that you had something prepared, I've been very excited for this. I'm doing the standard get up today.
Okay. I love it.
So I have my tenets in life, and I talked about ketogenic diet and fasting, and there's sunshine and body movement, and all these things. And one of my tenets in life is to have fun. and enjoy life. Because as I like to say, if you can't have fun and enjoy life, then what's the point of even being here, right? So my tagline for the show is fix yourself with fat. And I have my rapper persona and I say it like this: fix yourself with fat. And I've been asking all my guests to do the tagline for us, and I'm putting together a compilation of everybody's version of fix yourself with fat. So what do you think, Natasha? Is that something you can do for us today?
Yeah, and I'm switching it up a bit here because there's gonna actually be a lead up to the tagline.
Oh boy.
So I'm hoping that this comes through because I'm just gonna say this right now. I'm not a professional singer by any means, but it's has a little bit of music associated with it.
All right.
So I'm hoping it comes through okay. So I'm gonna play the music and then we'll kind of get into what's the word I'm looking for? You'll just see how it goes. How about that? Okay, we'll give it a go and see how this works out. I am feeling great. Got ketones in my brain. That's what Steven's saying. That's what Steven's saying. Put those fats up on your plate and eat them every day. Cause that's what Steven's saying. That's what Steven's saying. Cause those carbs will make you crash, 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 crash. But the fats will make it last, 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 last. Cause the carbs will make you crash, 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 crash. Fix yourself with fat. Fix yourself with fat.
Oh my gosh. That was so amazing.
Challenge accepted.
Oh man. Wow. And now you're really raising the bar for anybody else coming after you. Oh, I can't wait to make a short of this. This is going to be one of the first things I do. I'm going to make a short of this and we're putting that out. I can't wait for my daughter to hear it because she knows the song. Oh, you are so awesome. That was great.
I was wondering that too. I was like, is your daughter a Swiftie?
I think Taylor Swift's maybe a little bit too trendy for her. She likes her and all, but she knows the song
Yeah.
for
Cool.
sure.
Good. Yeah,
That was
I was
that's
thinking of your
awesome.
daughter when I was putting it together. So
I had no idea. Like I knew you were going to be doing something with a song, but I had no idea. And then as you put the song on, I'm like, wow, I wonder how she's going to fit the tagline in there. That was so great.
good. Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So it was
Oh
fun. It was
man,
fun thinking of how I was going to do it. So
that was so awesome. You sounded
good.
really good too.
Oh, good. Okay.
That was the best. That was the best tagline ever.
Aw.
But aside from that, I am really fortunate that you and I are friends,
Mhm.
and I'm thankful that you came on. It was a pleasure to have you, and I'm hoping that we're going to get this message across to many more people for keto, for ADHD because of you. So thank you very much, Natasha, for coming on.
Yeah, and I appreciate you inviting me to come on here too. And this was a blast. And again, too, I feel the same way. I'm so fortunate that you and I got connected. You know, we've developed this great friendship. I'm also excited to see where that goes and just where metabolic psychiatry is going to go in general. So I'm really hoping that the work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing, are going to have a greater reach here over time.
It definitely will. Thanks again. Have a great day.
Okay, you too. Thanks, Stephen.